Lateral bending, if you like this position, nothing changes. Both segmental contact points, whether you like to use the fingertips of your hand or whether you like to use the lateral aspect of your index. Both hand contacts are basically going to be in the same level down around the spinous process, in this case is C4, just like we did beforehand. And a good drill for this maneuver would be to do it in front of a mirror. Wherever your segmental, your contact point is, this is where your fulcrum is. The bending, the action should take place over your fulcrum. And if we do this correctly, the cervical spine below your contact should relatively be straight. The bend should occur really where your contact is. So my segmental contact point for lateral bending is going to be the spinous process. The line of drive relative to is going to be from lateral to medial, in this case from right to left, for right lateral bending. Your indifferent hand is going to traction up the plane of the facet, which is 45 degrees, which is predominantly I to S simultaneously. So as I dive in with one, I'm going to traction with the other. For joint play, from neutral to pretension, you should feel those segments buckle or give as they bend away from you. That would be normal joint play. If you don't feel that, if you feel the two move as a team, you're saying that the joint play is either reduced or it's absent. Once you feel pretension, end play is from pretension. We're going to spring through that contact, feeling the give and the resiliency within the joint. So this would be, in this case, right lateral bending in a seated position, if you choose to use your hands down. For lateral bending, the same thing holds true. My spinous process is going to be my segmental contact point. My line of drive relative to that spinous process is going to be perpendicular to it, but just realize the plane of that perpendicular changes in lateral bending. As we said beforehand, if I'm in the lower cervical spine, the line of drive is going to be from lateral to medial, and your line of pull will be directed somewhat towards the opposite shoulder. In the upper cervical spine, the planes of the facets now lie in this plane. You're still lateral to medial, but the way you pull is going to be a little bit more along the plane of the lips. In the middle cervical spine, the planes of the facets look somewhere in that nature over there, so your line is still going to be lateral to medial, but your line of drive, your pulling, is going to be somewhere in between. To assess joint play, let's say I'm going to do, in this case, C4 once again. I'm going to go right lateral bending with C4. So if I establish where C4 is, I'm going to compress the overlying tissue against my contact. To assess joint play, I'm just going to laterally bend the head, bringing the head to pretension, feeling the amount of movement that takes place in that spine. We discussed the difference between joint play and lateral bending in the prior session. Once I bring the joint to pretension, the only difference I have to ask myself is, where in the spine am I? Just like in the upper thoracic spine, to assess end play, we brought the joint to pretension. I wouldn't keep my hand on top of the head because as I spring across, it might cause too much tension in the upper cervical spine. So instead what I do is I bring the joint to pretension, and then from there, I'm going to come up underneath the head and up under the occiput. My traction is going to be up the plane of the cervical facets, is going to be predominantly I to S. So I'm going to both pull lateral to medial in the spinous as I traction up and above, bending that stick over my contact from I to S. As you move higher up in the spine, though, if you're in the upper cervical spine, I'm so close to where my hand contact is here, there's no problem that if I wanted to continue using this. So let's just say, for example, you found dysfunction in the upper cervical spine. I would pull into that spinous process, because that's my fulcrum, laterally bend over my contact, and now I can pull through the plane of the joint and also traction above the head, because I'm relatively close to my contact. So just remember, as you drop further down the spine, you also want to bring the indifferent hand further and further down. In essence, you're with the same segmental level all the way up. So at C4, basically I'm here. I probably want to just cup and cradle basically below the occiput and then traction up. If I want to establish left lateral bending, do I have to move to either side? Not necessarily. This time instead I can just use my thumb contact, come into the spinous process, in this case is C4. My spring is going to be from lateral to medial. And this time, for joint play, I can just laterally bend the head to the right. For end feel, I bring it to pretension, But because I'm down here, I'm now going to drop my hand under the occiput, up on the neck, and traction it, in essence, onto the base of the occiput, I to S with my indifferent hand, as I spring from lateral to medial. There are a number of different contexts you can use, but the basic premise is the same. Lateral bending.
Cool.